Hey there, it's Angelina with another MSP lesson guide. This is lesson 2 of dermatology, and it's titled Skin Injuries. So in this lesson, students are going to learn about the skin, but specifically how it can be broken through the formation of lacerations or cuts. And so they're all going to be little physicians and treat these cuts by modeling suturing, okay? So the materials are pretty simple. You have cardstock for the hands that they're going to trace, markers to create incisions, scissors, that's really more for you than them, hole puncher to punch holes that they will then suture through in the cardstock arms that they make, thick drinking straws with which you can suture, and then yarn. So for dermatology, I like to use slides a lot. It's really helpful when looking at skin models. And something that I like to stress a lot in dermatology, there we go. Something that I like to stress a lot throughout dermatology is that we have 3 layers of skin, and this is best demonstrated if you use a PowerPoint or Google Doc format. So I have pictures like this a lot that show the epidermis, the dermis, and we typically call it the hypodermis, but it's also known as a subcutaneous tissue. Okay, so this was for the first lesson, but let me scroll here. So every lesson I like to start with a general question: how do we fix the skin? Okay, and then a basic picture. Something that's important for dermatology, specifically lesson 2, is that when you're showing them pictures of stitches in your slides, you need to make sure that the pictures are not animated, but yeah, I guess animated and drawn. You don't want to show them real stitches. Maybe if you talk to your teacher first to see if they can handle it. But yeah, you want to introduce kind of like pictures of the actual body to them very slowly, because if you just show them a bunch of like sliced up human skin with stitches in it, they're not going to react too well. So I would, step on the brakes with actual pictures of stitches. This lesson is a really great time to incorporate the 3 layered skin thing, because that's on the post test and you really want them to remember that. So here's some great pictures I found showing stitches through the different layers of skin. Then I introduced the materials. Okay, so after I introduce the materials for lessons like this where you're building something, I typically give, open-ended question, quick little lecture, show them the materials, and then I don't have any more slides for that lesson. Then I move on to the document camera where we build whatever model they're building together. So in this case, we have the arm. So what you do first is you pass out all the materials, and I recommend that you use your prep time to cut these drinking straws into the sutures. You just make a diagonal cut, about maybe 2 inches, inch to 2 inches long for the straw, and then cut an adequately sized piece of yarn for each student. So that way you're not cutting in class, okay? And then you want to pass out the cardstock and have the students trace their arms and hands onto it and then cut their arms and hands out. And it's actually a lot harder than you think for students to cut like the finger part. So you want to give them enough time to do that. Once they have the hands cut out, you want to just not glue them yet, but place them against a different colored background cardstock paper, just so they can, see what they're working with. Then what they want to do with the marker is draw a line down the arm that represents the cut. You want to make sure that this is more on the arm, the skinny part of the arm, rather than the hand. It will make hole punching a lot easier. Then you have your straw. That's what you're going to suture with. You can thread the yarn through the straw pretty easily, but you might want to tape it at the end just so that it sticks. Now, I had my teacher help me hole punch. in your supply box, you should have just a little tiny hole puncher that does one hole at a time. And the reason that you want the cut to be on the skinny part of the arm is so that the hole puncher can reach, because if you have it on the fat part of the arm, it can't reach towards the middle. So make sure their cut isn't too long. So just hole punch a couple times on each side, and then they can begin threading through. And, you know, my students were really focused with their threading, and they did a pretty good job, but it doesn't really need to be perfect, you know, as long as they get through every single thread hole, then it'll be fine. Then you can cut off the excess, maybe tape it to the back for them, and then they're all done. Oh, but you need to glue your arm to the background cardstock. I recruited my teacher to help with that. She just walked around with a bottle of glue, and then when students were done, she would just squirt, and they'd paste it on. This saves a lot of time, because if you wait until every single person is done, you're going to have students just sitting around. So it's great if you have someone going around, you or your teacher going around and gluing for the students to finish, like when they finish. So then everyone is done at the end, and we have a successful stitch. This lesson is really successful. They also kept all of these. I really like how they turned out. I think I have pictures of my students. So yeah, you can see the fingers are a little messy, and this person didn't really have an arm. Very nice. So yeah, it's a good lesson. It's super easy. Just another one of those lessons where you should definitely prep beforehand, but there's not much prep to be done, just cutting straws and yarn.